Hello, behind me here we have a 2002 Mitsubishi Lancer, and just got done doing a timing belt on it last night. I don't know what base model this is, I don't know what model that is, but it's the 4-cylinder 2.0 liter. Anyhow, backstory on this, buddy of mine that I also work with, he's driving it to work the other day and it just shuts off. And he said he nearly ran it out of gas, but he did go get gas before he got on the freeway. And so we thought maybe the fuel pump might have got hot or something like that, and did some self-diagnosis on the side of the road with a can of carb cleaner, and it wasn't even trying to start. So starting to think an ignition problem. So he lives in an apartment complex, and they won't let him work on anything there. And this was his only mode of transportation to and from work, and he just had a baby a couple months ago. So a little bit of a hardship there. I have a nice long driveway. There's quite a bit more in front of me, and in San Diego that's kind of hard to come by, so it's a good spot to do some work like this. So he has it towed over here, and it's got a code, camshaft position. I can't remember exactly what number it is, but it was a cam sensor code. So a little research kind of makes me think that we might have a timing belt here that has lost some teeth. So quick diagnosis of it. We took the oil fill cap off and looked in at the cam, and it wasn't rotating as we were cranking it. So it was a timing belt. So we tore it all down a couple days later. He works second shift, so we can only do this on the weekend. I'm on days. I told him to go ahead and buy the timing belt kit with the tensioner and the water pump while you're in there. And I'd never worked on one of these Mitsubishis before, and so I've done timing belts on twin turbo Audis, which was a pretty bear of a job, but not one of these. So this was actually a pretty easy tear down, but I know that it's an interference engine, and I told him, I said, based on the condition of the car, you're probably gonna have to end up doing the head too, and money's kind of tight right now for him. And so I sent him a list of $500 cars, 3-cylinder Geo Metro, which I probably would have gone for. Those are actually hard to come by out here because they get 40 miles a gallon. But he said, no, I got to try and make this one run. So I said, well, we put this thing together. It might run. It won't pass smog probably, and it'll probably throw codes because you've probably smashed your valves into the pistons. So get up close here a little bit, and we'll turn this sucker around. So here it is, 4-cylinder 2.0 liter 16 valve. So we tore it apart, and I said, you can throw a belt on this thing and it might run. It may not run well. He said it only has to make it till March, and then he's gonna get something else. I don't know what that means, but anyhow. So I said, well, we put the timing belt on it, we can still take the head off and not have to redo the entire job that we'd done before. So I said, okay, well, maybe we'll get lucky, but chances are I felt like I was working in vain. After we tore into it, realized that the cam gear that's underneath this cover was actually pointing directly at the top dead center timing mark, which was great because that's where the belt broke, and it was, I dead nuts on. And so however, all the cranking he did after that probably did smash the pistons into the valves because the crank was still turning, obviously. So it might have been okay until we did that. But however, we went ahead and put this thing on, and everything I'd read said it's not going to work and all this sort of thing. You're bent your valves, and maybe we did. Maybe the valves are bent, and I even thought so. But got in there, finished the job last night after several hours, and the thing actually starts up and runs pretty damn good. And I cleared the cam code that was residual. It never came back. I took it around the house and around the block a few times, put some load on it, got it up to operating temp, and it seems to run fine, notwithstanding all the other issues that are with this car. But having never worked on a Mitsubishi, I can kind of get the appeal of these cars. It's got some zip to it, and so this is a cold start the next morning. So it might have some bent valves, I don't know. It runs good enough. It runs and drives, it doesn't stutter or anything like that. And I took it up to operating temperature, it doesn't get hot. You know, it's cold now, but I mean, you can 130,000 miles on this car, and you know, obviously never had the timing belt done, and so went ahead and did a normal service on it that you would if you're trying to avoid a timing belt break. But anyhow, let's go over some of the things that we did. There were 3 things that made this job hard. Other than that, it was a really easy timing belt job. The tear down itself was really easy. The tear down itself was really easy. Probably one of the quickest tear downs I've done. We had it done. Of course, there were 2 of us, but I didn't read the manual or anything, and we didn't do any DIYs. I watched one YouTube video about a couple of parts of it, and we just took it apart, and we did the motor. We had to take the motor mount completely off. This motor mount here, I don't know if the light will adjust. You had to take that whole motor mount off. Easier to take the power steering assembly off and just lay that over to the side. There's a hard line, but it's got a flex on it too, so you can lay that over, unplug some relays, and then you can get to the covers and get that off. The other hard thing was the lower crank pulley. Trying to find a way to hold that with a pry bar. You can't really get anything through it to, you know, pry or to hold it, and so I had to get a little creative, but ended up getting a pry bar in there with like a sideways foot on it, and then it was enough to hold it. I think I cranked that down to like 130 foot-pounds, and it finally broke, but it's convenient because it has a 1/2-inch drive inlet right on the snub of the crank, so right on the bolt. Right, the head of the bolt is actually, you know, a squared recess, so you can put just a ratchet right in there, no socket. So I don't have a shop air out here. My battery impact wouldn't do it. So anyhow, taking it apart was easy. Putting it back together, 3 things was, of course, getting that lower crank pulley tight again. And then the fact that we just had daylight savings here in Southern California, so it got dark at like 5 o'clock, and it was definitely more than 2 hours putting this car back together. And a large part of that was because of the light. I did have shop lights set up on the driveway, but you know, that's only so good, and dropping bolts and everything. And then the order of operations, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. You know, it was like a week or so in between the tear down and the rebuild. By the time he ordered the kit, and you know, we had time to do it, and I thought, yeah, you just slap the cover, you put the belt on, slap the covers on, and you know, I thought I could put the power steering pump back on, and well, I did all that in the wrong order, so ended up having to take the covers and power steering pump off. I think the motor mount pretty much has to go back in first. Then you can put your because the power steering pump line runs in front of the cover and in front of that lower motor mount, so I kind of learned that the hard way. So we had to redo things a couple times, which is nothing's hard to get to really. You gotta jack the motor up and down a little bit to be able to get to some of the bolts, be able to get wrenches on them. It was nice to have some ratcheting boxing wrenches in some of the recessed areas. That kind of helped, but other than that, it was when it came back to life, we you know, did the water pump on it, and it's seems to be good. So he's gonna come get it later today. I would call that a success. So not very often can you break a timing belt on an interference engine and come back with no codes. So we'll see how long it lasts. So here's the timing belt kit that he bought. It's a Gates brand, which is, I think, what most people use. It's from what I've read, it's a pretty good quality. This is the part number and everything. So that was about 78 bucks for this kit. Like I said, I told him to go ahead and get the tensioner and the water pump, because you're going to spend all that time to, you know, if one of these were to go bad, you basically were doing the same timing belt job just to get to these. And you know, the bearings and these tensioners can go bad, and these can start leaking. You know, Murphy's Law would say you put this just the belt on, and this would start leaking the next day. So I think just the belt is 30 bucks, so a little bit more money, 78 bucks, and you've got some good insurance there. Except if you, you know, had to get your head redone, which would most likely be the case in an engine like this. In an interference engine, you probably would bend valves, and most of the videos I saw, that was the case. So, but probably $200 or $300 or so to get your head redone in the machine shop. So he was saying that he would go ahead and do that too as the next step. So, but we're running now, and I actually had to let him borrow my my old diesel, 83 diesel Mercedes for a while. So, but now I've got the car out of the driveway, and or will have soon when he comes to get it, and hopefully my neighbors will have a little more patience with me, so I won't have a car jacked up with no wheels on it. But I'd say 1 in 100 here. We got a winner here with an interference engine.